What's up, everybody? Welcome to Podcast Now Back to the Past. I am Alex, and I am joined by a very special guest today, and we are here to talk about Doom 2016. We're kind of celebrating the 8-year anniversary. We timed it extremely well, almost like Sixth Sense-like. We have, obviously, the announcement of Doom the Dark Ages, still a little while away, but we thought this was a perfect time to jump into really a game that kind of reinvented itself. It is a phenomenal game. I've played it a few times, but my guest here, this is his first time, so I think this is going to be a pretty cool dynamic. So I want to welcome to the channel, welcome to the video, Wicked. I'm going to have all of his social media stuff in the description. He runs a phenomenal channel who also does some things like this as well. So I think you're going to like him. Check his channel out. Wicked, thank you so much, buddy, for being here.
Yeah, of course, man. Thank you for having me. I mean, it's always an honor, man. You kind of helped me get started on videos, and you're definitely a huge inspiration. But yeah, I mean, this game is incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, so let's just break it down a little bit. So like I said, I've played this once before, right before Doom Eternal, actually, and then we thought this would be a good game for both of us to do for this video, and I think it's fair to say we both really like this game. So we've written down a couple of like the key points we want to touch on, but just coming from you as a first time player of this, like, what was it like? Because it's a very fast tempo game. It's a game that I mean, it takes itself seriously in the fact that you're in it right from the very first second, and it really doesn't let up almost at all. So what was it like going through this 8 to 10 hour gauntlet?
I mean, even just from the start, you load the game up, right? And there's no really a tutorial. You wake up on the table, you grab the pistol, and you go. So for me, that was definitely a change of pace for sure, because I feel like a lot of games now, you kind of have the opening cutscenes that take you into the game, and then this one, it just kicks you right off, and it doesn't stop the entire time. I was shocked that when they saved in between levels, it stopped moving. Yeah. It was just constant.
Yeah, it's one of like the most fast-paced games that kind of just gets right down to it, and that's what I think I appreciate. So because you play a lot of games have fluff, right? And we talk about it all the time. Even games that are 8 to 10 hours, even games that are shooters, they can have some fluff in it. This game, and I think it's a testament to the level design, which is something we'll talk about. The guns, the way they introduce enemies and they become reoccurring enemies, right? That's a huge part of Doom. They just do it literally better than anybody else. And the fun thing, is you mentioned off camera, the story. There's two kind of interesting facts that I want to throw at you and kind of get your opinion on. Number one, considering the story was the last thing they kind of put into the game. They designed the game around the game first, then they added the story. It was kind of intended to be the weakest part to it. And then something I didn't know, but you can kind of figure out based off the last Doom game before 2016, this game was actually in development hell for a good 5 to 6 years. And that is insane to think about when you think of how good the game is, because I believe they started working on this game in 2007 or 2008, and it really didn't get going until 2013, 2014. So for the first 6 years, they had no idea what they were doing. They lost a lot of the staff, and then they just miraculously figured it out. So when I think about games that have been in a pickle for a while, it's like, there could always be a silver lining. There could always be a light at the end of the tunnel. Sometimes they literally just figure it out. And this game, yeah, it's 8 years old, but this game is a good example of, once they figure it out, it's just incredible. So what is that like, hearing about the story, hearing about how the game was not even existent for the first 6 years, does that make it more impressive how good the game even is?
Yeah, I think that for that aspect of the game, it made my jaw drop, for one, because I went into this not thinking there was going to be any sense of story. I went in thinking I was just gonna not even have to play with audio for most of the time, besides maybe my TV speakers for music. But then once you get into it, once you start seeing the other characters and the different enemy types, like you said, it was just non-stop action the entire time. And with the story too, I felt like, yeah, there were times where you could kind of feel that they were just rushing it along, but it didn't feel like something that was just thrown together all at the last second. I could follow it even if I wasn't 100% paying attention a lot of the time. I thought a lot of the lore that was there was really cool. And as someone who, this was my first Doom game ever, I didn't feel overwhelmed. Like, we started and I was kind of confused at the first 5 minutes, and I was able to just catch right up with everything.
Yeah, and I think that goes to really, one of the main things I want to talk about in this video. I think two very special things. I think I've already kind of said it, but the most two special things with this game is the way that they do enemies, and I get and that was literally everything. So the design of the enemies, how different they all are, and we even talked, before we recorded this, the movement, and the movement's connected to the enemies, right? Because you're always having to move, you're always having to kind of react to what the enemies are giving you. You're looking for the power ups, all that jazz. So the enemies in this game are just so good. The way they introduce them, and they become regulars, right? So like somewhat bosses. Now there are like actual bosses, and they're pretty okay. I don't think they're my favorite part of the game. I think that's when the game almost simplifies itself like too much, because it's just like 1-on-1 or 1-on-2 towards the end of the game. But for the most part, some of the bigger enemies, right, they become, okay, well, these are sizable things that are going to take a while, and then they just throw them at you. Towards the end, when you enter an arena, and then they throw, like, it's like a 10-15 minute just wave of enemies, and like it's hard to kind of describe just how fun it is when you're moving so quick, when so many enemies are coming at you. They're all different. So that's a big part of it. And I guess, very much connected to that is the map design or level design with, well, collectibles going off the beaten path, right? I like the way the map is. It can get, like, that map style tends to get confusing for me, right? Because it's like multiple floors, and then I kind of lose my place. But it really it pushes you to explore, because you get a lot of cool things for doing it. And the way that they just kind of funnel you from location to location, and then you get a new kind of challenge. It's something I really respected in Doom Eternal, and I always thought this game was like considerably weaker than Doom Eternal, and it's been 4 years. But replaying it, I think this game is like the top of its class. Like, I really thought the game was weaker. That's something that even you and I haven't talked about before. Like, I thought the game was weaker than it was, and playing it, it's like no. Like, everything's here that you want from a game. It captures that feeling of moving so quickly and switching your weapons and getting the chainsaw out to replenish. That was, by the way, that was a big feature they wanted to specifically put in this game. So I guess, what do you think of all of that, or if you want to run off of that into a different direction?
Yeah, I mean, I think a big part of why the level design works so well is just the way that they designed the movement for this game. I know when I first loaded it up, I kind of knew what to expect because I had seen people play Doom Eternal. I'd seen gameplay of this game, but I know within the first level, I probably died more than I should have as a grown adult who plays video games a lot of the time. But for myself, as the game progresses and as you are able to explore, and for me, I know the way I play games is, especially games like this, I'll just go head first at any enemy. I remember I was trying my best not to just melee attack every single thing, and then once I got the chainsaw, it was just like a free-for-all. Yeah. But it really helps that you can't really progress further until either you take out all the enemies, or it's really like on your own dime a lot of the time, I feel like. So I think that helps with why the level design works so well. Is it's fast-paced, it's not too complex a lot of the time. Now, it can get a little bit either repetitive, or certain areas just they don't flow the exact way that I think they were intended to. But yeah. I think overall, it just is so much fun to be able to look at every nook and cranny. I know that this game is, I don't consider this like a horror game by any means, but I definitely consider it horror adjacent, because a lot of the time you could just be exploring something, and maybe again it's just my own sense of not really paying too much attention to what's around me, but I would get like jump scared almost, because there would be like one enemy that I just wasn't paying attention to because I was just so lost in it.
There was towards the end, and I don't remember this specific level, but towards the end you have to go, I think, into like a hole, and one of those flying ones with the jetpack, it comes out of the hole, and it's just one. Yeah. And that legitimately scared me. So yeah, when you say there's things to discover kind of in every corner, and I love the point you made with like everything's on your own dime. Like, you have the trials, right? And that's a cool little, I forgot about those entirely. That's a cool little side thing that this game does, that if you go off the beaten path, you find things that are going to give you some sort of limitations with it, whether it's a weapon or one of them. I think you start off with 1 health, and I don't think you even get health in that one, right? So those things really can challenge you. The rest of the game, yeah, you go at your own pace. I think it can, like you said, some of the levels don't flow as well, or I got lost a couple times when I was looking
Yeah.
for the key cards. There's a couple levels where you have to find like the blue one. Then after you do that, then you find the yellow, then you find the red, and those ones like I spent more time in them than I really should have. But beyond that, for the most part, when you enter an arena and then they spawn like 70 enemies kind of in waves at you, it's how you want to handle it. And that's something I want to talk to you about just in a second, but it's how you want to handle it. And it's at your own speed. You can hide and kind of collect yourself. You can just go running and gunning. And that leads to the next point, the weapon variety and how you take out enemies. So I know you just mentioned the melee thing. I find it like the system that they put together, right? I think is really incredible and something that's not really talked about much with when the enemies light up, right? Like that's such a fundamental part to this game where you always want to, go up there and attack them. You get bonuses for doing that. When you're in a pinch, you do the chainsaw, and different enemies will have different, amounts of the bar of the chainsaw that you can use. So you can kill like the highest, like that bull, like the most elite enemy. You can do that, but then you're going to lose the entire chainsaw, but you're going to get full ammo. Like every single thing is going to be stocked up. And it pushes exploration because you want to find those fuel canisters around the map. You always are looking for armor. You're always looking for health. So, and then even for me, playing it, like you realize different guns are better for different enemies. Now, I had a couple personal favorites, and I want to throw it to you. What was well, I guess, your response to what I just said, but what was like your style of play? Like with the running and gunning, did you do chains? Like I barely used the chainsaw. So like, did you use chainsaws a lot? Did you stick to only a couple guns? How did you actually like play the game?
Yeah, I think growing up with the Gears of War franchise made me a chainsaw maniac, because if there's ever some sort of chainsaw mechanic in a game, that's my go-to. I think even in like totally off topic, but I think in the Forest 2 you can get a chainsaw like weapon or tool, and I use that the entire time. So the second I got the chainsaw, it was for me shotgun and using the chainsaw, and I almost did not use anything else the entire game, which definitely made it more difficult, and it made an 8 to 10 hour experience probably closer to 15 if I'm being completely honest. But I think that this game rewards you for how you want to play the game. So if you want to play it a little more timid, nothing wrong with that gameplay style, but if you want to do it that way, you can go gather all your ammo, do it that way. If you want to be like me and just not really care if you die over and over and over and over again, like hitting your head against a stone wall, you can do that. And you'll eventually get past it, but you'll have to learn how to do your movement a lot quicker. And I think for me, one of the harder parts of playing that way specifically was in certain parts of different levels, I almost felt like I was trapped because I was such a up close and like almost personal gameplay style that I would get like I'd try to like move my guy to the left and he just hit the wall and I didn't know what to do and I would get killed and I'd have to like go at it again. But for me, that's part of the gameplay loop that I just enjoy so much.
Right. Yeah, no, that's the one thing I think back, and again, I don't remember it fully, but when I think of Doom Eternal, the maps, I think they relied a lot more on those portals, right? And now the portals are in this game, Doom 2016, but they're towards the second half, and there's really not a lot of them, right? But I just remember thinking back, I think this game has the movement. There's multiple floors for a lot of these levels. There is always the movement of like moving left and right? Because you got those like grunt enemies that throw the fireballs at you, so you're always kind of like swerving, like going at diagonals with them. Then you got the bigger ones that you're trying to pick your spot. So I think this has the movement. I do remember, again, like the next game, I think it relies a little bit more on the portals where you're in one part of the map and then all of a sudden you're on another, right? So I think it does that extremely well. But yeah, that's interesting. You say like shotgun was my main one. I didn't use the double barrel, like once they give it to you a little bit later on. I mainly just relied on like the main shotgun. I did like the plasma type sniper thing. I used that for like the bigger, fatter guys with like the double hand weapons. It was interesting just playing it, and or like the floating ones, right, with like the one eye. I use rocket launchers a lot on them, but you can I think get away with picking a preferred weapon, and I mean like the shotgun was my preferred weapon, but it's interesting, like you said, the play style because yeah, you can if you're so close to, or if you're so used to being so up close, right, and then sometimes if you just have like a wave of enemies that are just not meant for that, you're either gonna have a hard time or you're gonna have to kind of switch up your attack style. But I think the game gives you enough stuff, whether it's the random, like, well, not random, but the power-ups right around the map and stuff to make you invincible, or to do what is it, 2 or 4 times like extra damage. That one is lovely, right, because you can just like go to town. Even with a shotgun you can go to town. So I think the game gives you enough where if you want to, you can literally, like you said, you can play your own style.
Yeah, I think now that you even talked about the power-ups, I don't know why my brain just kind of like switched off of those, but it felt like playing a older like Call of Duty Zombies game, but like turned up to 11 a lot of the time, especially with those power-ups. I think it's incredibly smart to have those because even though this game is very arcade-like, it just adds that extra sense of, oh, like what if you played this level again without using the power-up and using a different weapon? And it adds to replayability, but then just overall enjoyment, I think, when you have these different X factors that you can find. And it also goes back to how you talked about the ammo a lot of the time, or the charge, the battery for the chainsaw. It adds just an extra sense of wanting to keep playing, even if you completely beat the game already. Like for me, I finished the game pretty quickly and went back and tried different, not routes, but tried different directions of how I wanted to play different levels.
Right. Yeah, I think. And even going off the beaten path, finding like the Doom guy, like action figures. There's like the retro levels you can kind of. I only found one, but you can walk yourself into that. The game has a really good way of doing exploration, and I just think like that to me is this game's like secret sauce, where the combat is just so good. It's probably not. I mean, it's talked about a lot, but I think it actually should even be talked about more because like it's just so fluid. And actually, one thing we haven't talked about, so I believe you played it through Xbox, right? And I played it through PlayStation. Yes. Like 8 years old. Well, number one, visually outstanding. Like when you're blowing their heads off, or guts are coming out, like it looks so good. But also, for a game like this, it needs to run, and I would dare say this, it needs to run perfectly. Because the frame rate and just the smoothness of it needs to be, because you're moving so quick and you're moving faster than a Call of Duty or a Battlefield or anything. Yeah. At least I believe so. So I mean, I'm just really impressed that a game that, and I don't know if it's a good or bad thing, but when I see like the Dark Ages, I mean, like, my jaw hits the floor. I'm so excited. But I think, like Doom holds up. Doom 2016 holds up really well. Like you and I just played it like a week before they showed Dark. And I don't know about you, right? But I mean, it looks better for sure, like visually. But it's like this game that's 8 years old, for the fluid, how fluid it is and just how good it looks, like it's still 100%. You could release it this year and get away with it.
Oh yeah, I think that is honestly, it's kind of a testament to the level design too, because I think the team knew going into it, like, we're going to make a game that's going to be able to hold up. How do we do so? Let's make some of the levels a lot more compact and some of the areas are a lot more open. And I think that with games like Doom the Dark Ages, I kind of got the Metro Prime 4 Beyond feel, where that game, it looks really good for a Switch title, but it doesn't look all that different from the other Metro Prime games. And obviously I think Doom the Dark Ages, like if I play that on my PC, it's going to look a lot better than it does on my Series X, but I'm planning on playing it on my Series X because of Game Pass. And I think that it's just fascinating that a game that came out in 2016 can look better and hold up better than games that we've got even 4 years ago in 2020.
Yeah, no, it's this game, and that's just a thing you could say about the game in every way, right? Like the game has held up from the gun, from literally every. It is still ahead of its time with the like. People try to steal it, right? Like I keep going back to it, but the way that they move you organically, I mean, it's so, and I think Doom Eternal does that actually even better, thinking back to it, but the way that they funnel you from one place to the next, and they always like increase, and you don't even kind of realize it, but they're increasing the difficulty on you, right? Because like
yes.
Yeah, because like You might face one kind of tough end or like one of those bulls, but then by the end you're facing three, and sometimes it's like two at a time, right? They have this way of stacking, and I'd love to know like the phrases they call it, right? But they have this
Yeah.
way of just layering things on top of each other without you even realizing it, where all of a sudden you're introduced to those jetpack ones, right? And they become a fundamental part of every wave after that, right? Like
Yeah.
and they just do it so well with mixing and matching, and those like dinosaur ones, right, where you have to shoot the tail that charge at you, like they come in kind of late, but then they're an organic part of every wave after it, and you have to handle them very differently while you're also dealing with these grunts throwing the fireballs and all the you as a player has to stack all of these enemies that are coming at you on top of each other, and you have to adjust your play style, because how you play 2 hours in is not how you play, and you realize that, right? Like as you're playing through, you're like, oh man, like I'm getting better. At least for me, like I'm switching my weapons consistently and trying to use it for like the best enemy. You're facing all these. It's insane how much the game gradually like improves or adds or whatever buzzword you want to use. That might be like the secret sauce of Doom, and that's what everybody Metal Hellsinger, right, with like the beats. Every game tries to do what Doom did. I think Doom 2016 does it better than games that are doing it now that is trying to copy from Doom 2016.
Yeah, I think that with that too, there's just so many things that people should be taking from Doom. I think like the movement is something that not a lot of people would be able, I think, to replicate, just because it works so fundamentally well in this kind of reboot first of this newer generation of Doom games. But I think that taking things like the level design, or even like you said, the kind of ramping up in difficulty, is something that a lot of either horror games should be doing, because I think a horror game is something that Doom can inspire a lot of. But I think that any sort of game, beat 'em up game, should do it. Any type of game should be able to do that, because and here it's like I said, for me it was like I was constantly hitting my head against a stone wall until either the wall cracked or I had to find a different way around it. One of the things that I think surprised me so much was the sound design of this game. The music, even the way like the enemy sound, the way it sounded when you would break and fist and just destroy some of these demons. It was almost scarily fun to me, because everything was just perfect. I think that the music was such a big factor, and I'd love to hear your kind of take on it, because I know for me, I didn't grow up listening to that style of music, and now I'll be in the gym and I'm like, oh, I could think of this one Doom soundtrack and just kind of throw it on and think about it. So what are your thoughts on the music?
Yeah, it's I think you mentioned like visceral, right? Like it's in your
Yeah.
face, and it's something that I think you can play this game on silent, but I think you're losing a pretty bit, like the soundtrack, and like you said, even like the noises or the sounds, right? It's so iconic, and I think it pumps you up more. I think it actually goes to what you just said, your point of like it feeling almost like it's scary how like how good you feel busting it up. Because, well, actually two parts to that. One that I forgot to mention, you do a lot of the same like attack animations quite often, especially if you're actually meleeing them a lot, right? You're gonna do a lot of it, but because it's so visceral, because it feels so good in maybe like an eerie way, because the music and the tone of the sound, all that stuff, because it's like backing it up, it never, I think, gets old. But it has this sense of like always pumping you up. Oh, it literally, like, you look at the cover of this game, right? Like, this guy is massive, and that suit, I don't know if it's that important to talk about the box cover for it. I do have it physically. I'm sure I'll show it as this video is going, but the cover of this game is phenomenal. It's kind of simple, right? It's not all that complex, but he is such a monster, and he's so big. And one thing I actually think we both didn't even say in this video, like, you feel like you're him, and I don't know if you always feel like that. I kind of feel in first-person shooters there tends to maybe be a disconnect. When I'm playing a Call of Duty game, I don't always think I'm that character. But in this, it's like you feel so powerful. You feel like you are ripping apart, a demon or whatever. And I think the music and the sound has a lot to do with that, right? Because it almost like pumps you like a gym type soundtrack where it's like, yeah, I can do this. I can rip that demon's head off, right? Like it's got that kind of feel to it.
Yeah, I hope that the Doomslayer is able to hear the music that we are, because that would explain why he's able to do everything. I mean, just from the start, even in any story beat, this game makes you just feel incredible. And to your point, there's so many games, like I think of Cyberpunk 2077 now, like after all the updates and the changes, it's a lot easier to kind of see yourself in V, even though V has a name and is given its own story. But in this game in particular, like you feel like you're this ancient demon slayer who has to just go through all of the monsters of hell to save the world. And I think it's just such a unique aspect to the game that a lot of people don't mention. I know that a lot of people felt that way back with a lot of the earlier Halo games. They saw themselves in Master Chief, and that's why they were able to fall in love with that franchise so well, is because the music was able to pump them up when it needed to, or it was able to make them feel the emotional beats when needed. And I think this game, forget any emotional beats, you're going to just feel like a monster. If you're angry, this is such a great game to play, because it's just like you're going to let out all those emotions. It's basically a survival horror game for all of the demons in the game, because this dude is an absolute unit coming at you the entire game.
It's interesting though bringing up Master, because they kind of are similar, right? Like the suit design reminds you, of each other. They don't talk a lot, and and Master Chief kind of went through where you could like Halo 4, right? Like really pushing the him and Cortana, and he talks more, than he ever has. But like this guy, man, a few words. You don't connect with him, I think, because of his story or because of like his arc, because it's not really there. But you connect with him because you literally, I don't know, I don't even know if I'm describing it right. You connect with him because you literally feel like him, right? Like you feel like this. Like you said, like an ancient, like demon slaying god, and that's that's what he is. He's literally woken up, right, to do certain things, and then he's put back to sleep or teleported. So I don't know, like he does a really good job of being a character you can connect with. Maybe not with being like the most elite character, but I think the way they do connect you with him is very special, because like most games you'd feel a disconnect because it's like, well, he doesn't talk a lot, or he doesn't really have an arc or anything, so I'm not going to get too connected. But it's actually through the gameplay that you feel connect, which you can't really do that with. Like Nathan Drake, you connect with Nate not because he can like scale, towers and stuff, right? You connect with him as a person. It's actually the reverse here, and that's I think very rare.
Yeah, I think too, I don't know how close-knit you are with a lot of the Smash game communities. I grew up in like the world of Nintendo. So for me, I remember when Smash Ultimate came out, right after this game came out, not even a month after, people were like, all right, we got to put Doomslayer in Smash, because he's just such a great character. And I think that having that much of like a fan cry for such a character that really, like you said, doesn't really have much personality or much traits to them besides just being able to just kick some serious ass for 8 hours, it's just incredible. And I think that to kind of tie it back to what we were initially talking about with it, the music is such a huge part of that, because they could have really screwed the game up if they didn't have such a great composer. And I feel like that just being able to throw the soundtrack on when you're not feeling the best, or you're working out, or just even if you're playing the game on silent but for some reason you can't connect directly to the game, I think having an aspect like that is so important for a game like this.
Yeah, and it's about the right choice of music too, right? Because like a Halo, kind of like this sprawling, like larger than life thing, doesn't work. It wouldn't work for a game like this, right? Like you have to pick something that really they have music, and whether that is something behind the scenes that I actually do not know of my behind the scenes facts. I wonder like what the collaboration there was, where it's like, does the music have to, I imagine the music has to match the energy that they wanted to do with the game. So they want it to be fast paced, they want it to be in your face nonstop, with just a couple times of being able to breathe in between your gauntlets, and then the music has to come in afterwards, right, and reflect that. And I really just don't think you could have done it any better than that.
Yeah, and I think I did my own little research. I just kind of went to the Doom fandom wiki page, and I know that again, correct me if I'm wrong because I haven't played the other Doom games, but one of the things that a lot of people I've noticed say about Doom 3, which was the one I think in 2004 that came out right before this one,
Hmm.
that it lacked a lot of an aggressive, louder soundtrack. And
Yeah.
just that little change alongside like a lot more enemies and a lot harder level designs, I think can show how great this franchise really is, because this game made me want to go back and replay the older games. I don't know if I will, because I feel like this game is just so great that it makes it hard to do that, but
Yeah.
it's just a testament to how great it is.
And I think the word was when they first started it, they didn't know, and I think somebody was asked like, "What is this game? Is it a sequel or a reboot?" And they said neither. And it's like, well, like which one? It has to be
Yeah.
kind of like
It
one of
has
them,
to be
right?
one of them, yeah.
Yeah, but and then as time went on, it did become a reboot because it wasn't going to be called just Doom, and they decided on that I think 2013, 2014, and then yeah, it became a reboot of sorts, and it has a lot of the enemy types of the original games, kind of not cameos, but kind of bringing them back. So, man, I mean, to end it before we get to because there was a couple of comments I want to read from the community. I mean, something that I don't think either of us can really connect to all that much, because I wasn't a big Doom guy before 2016 either. Like, this also brought the franchise back. Like Doom was
Yeah.
literally absent for what 10 plus years, right?
Yeah.
So not only is this game amazing, Doom Eternal I think is a better game, and we'll have to Doom Eternal turns 5 next year, so you know what? Maybe you and I have to do Doom Eternal next March or April. But
Yeah.
the games keep getting better, but maybe an underrated thing that even we can't appreciate, you or I, but maybe others can, like it brought it back. I mean, Doom wasn't in a good place before this. It was kind of in limbo for a long time, and then they didn't end that trilogy all that strong. So I mean, what it did for the franchise, it literally brought it back, and then it established itself as like one of the premier first person shooters out there.
It's really, I love stories like that because I'm such a people person that when somebody's favorite franchise returns to them, it's just amazing. It's kind of like you with Sly Cooper, right? Like as someone who likes to call himself your friend, I would love nothing more for a Sly 4, even though for me, I think it would be cool to experience it, but it's not something I actively look for.
Yeah.
And I think that with a game like this, it's just so great to see, because I feel like this is one of those perfect branching, and maybe it's because of even the year, maybe they got lucky with the year it came out in, that like middle of the 2010s, but this is such a perfect time to have a connection for older Doom fans and people who are like, I've heard of it, I've heard that it's an iconic series, but I've never really played it because it's too old. And I think this is a perfect game for that, because there is so much to appreciate as an older Doom fan, and they don't leave out the newer fan experience.
Yep. And I think the last fact that I can kind of remember, I think it came out either the same day as Uncharted 4 or right around it, because it was going, in terms of sales, it was going head to head. It lost originally, but it had legs. Like it sold, I think it sold maybe 2, 3, 4 million units just on PC. So this game did extremely well, and they got obviously right. The speed that this game came out, and then 4 years later, you do. In fact, they've slowed down, right? Because you did this Doom Eternal 4 years, and then it's probably going to be 5 or 6 before you get the next game. So what I want to do now, I want to look at some comments, as you guys may or may not know, and I'm trying to make it a thing. If it doesn't become a thing, it's fine. But the last game and the last video of every month, I put up posts on the channel. So if you guys want to write in with your experiences playing them, or whatever, I like to shout them out, show them in the video, and maybe talk about them a little bit. So we're just going to kind of rifle through some of the comments we got. We got Benjamin Snow, a friend of the channel. Good to see him. He just simply says, love this game. We have Lava Green 1813. I like in the game that you can collect pop. You got JoJo saying, quite literally, just beat it, and trying to wrap up Eternal's main campaign before the Elden Ring DLC. You have White Phoenix saying this was the first legitimate game in the Doom franchise I ever fully played through. I got into it a few years after its initial release, and I had a ton of fun. The only thing I will say is that it's kind of difficult getting used to the mechanics when I came back to it after recently playing Doom Eternal. So that's really the only thing that makes it hard to go back to this game. But this game is great visually and gameplay wise. You have Moist Potato saying, first Doom game I played and had an absolute blast. Followed it with Eternal and was even better. Can't wait for Doom The Dark Ages. And then you have Exeter FG. Doom has always reminded me of going to my friend's house and playing it on their PS4. I went with Xbox at the beginning of that generation and didn't have a PS4 yet, so it was always interesting to go experiment with it. As for the game itself, I don't have too much to say. I'm a huge fan of the OG Doom games, and I think these new ones did a great job modernizing that formula. However, I do think they're missing a little bit of that special charm of the original games. That's a nitpick, though. Overall, I like this game a lot. So besides the last one, it was actually interesting to read his, right, that it lost maybe a little something, but the rest of them, well, number one, I think you get a theme here, right, that we picked a very good time, to talk. Yeah. A very good time to talk about the game. I think this and Doom Eternal work, and I don't know, I can't control what you play and vice versa, but I think I'm gonna wait. I'm gonna wait till the 5-year for Doom Eternal. I feel like going into Doom Eternal right now would not be a bad move. Like, I feel like it would be very, very nice, and I think that's something that you're seeing, quite a few people say, but overwhelming, love for it, right? Whether it was the first game of the franchise for some of these people, or whatever it was. I think this game did what it needed to do.
Yeah, I think even with that last comment, there's so much now. Like, games, they look fantastic, right? But as someone who loves collecting games like I do, playing on like my GameCube, for example, there's just something so special about either seeing the 4x3 box or seeing just how the graphics look. There's something charming that mixes with nostalgia. So I don't even think that's a bad comment, to be honest, because if I was someone who grew up with the Doom games, I definitely feel the same way. I feel that way about the new Quidditch game coming out, because I grew up loving Quidditch World Cup and I like the new art style, but it just doesn't feel as charming. So I think that this game is, like I said earlier, it's a perfect median between introducing new people to the franchise and having them pick it up like myself and just absolutely adoring it, and trying to modernize it in a way that is pleasantful for the previous group of people who played the games, which I think is an extremely important thing that a lot of companies really either hit or miss on, because with franchises that have been around for a long time, I think it's important to carry on the older audience and what they want, and also introduce things that make it pleasant for newer audiences, something that I think the Star Wars franchise hasn't really done, but that's not here or there.
No, it's honestly a really good point, right? Even in gaming, and Star Wars games have done a much better job, right? But even in gaming just in general, you tend to get to a point where a franchise has overstayed its welcome, or you're starting to alienate more people. I think it's not the most comments in the world, but you can look at the reception to Doom 2016 and Eternal. We haven't gotten there yet, where you have like this angry mob of people saying, "Oh, you killed what made Doom special." You don't see that, right? Like, you really do not see that at all. So far, and I really don't see how it would change with the Dark Ages. I mean, it's been even more years, and so maybe people that were on the team for the first two aren't on it for this. Like, that could happen, but I feel like they have a very good formula. I feel like they just have to, kind of keep in a mini way reinventing themselves, right? In Dark Ages, now you have like a left arm type thing, right, with the shield and stuff.
And the dragon, I think, is something that can be pretty hit or miss. Like, I'm really excited for it because it just looks like another really fast way of killing a bunch of demons, but some people might not like that. So
and I mean, we might get there eventually, but, specifically talking about Doom 2016, it did a great job, like you said, of, brings in new people. I think many people started with Doom 2016. And then also, I think at the worst, you could say it just didn't even make anybody upset. At the best, you could say, the older fans of it liked it maybe even more. So I think that's it. What a great video, honestly. So I want to thank Wicked for, again, being here. Like I said in the beginning of the video, I'm going to leave all his stuff in the description. Check his channel out. Great guy, great creator. Thank you again, buddy, so much for being here.
Yeah, of course. I mean, it's always a pleasure talking to you just behind the scenes, and I feel like you're one of the only YouTubers who really tries to interconnect community with channel and videos, so I always appreciate it. Shout out to everyone who's in every single comment section, like myself. I'll see you guys in all of the comments and on the community tabs and live streams. So
well, I appreciate you being here. I appreciate all you guys watching. I think it might be okay to plug it here. I'm going to be live streaming this game this upcoming Friday. That's another thing we try to do with the games we do this kind of book club with. So I thought this was great. Wicked will absolutely be back. We'll have to pick a different game, maybe even Doom Eternal plus others. But appreciate all of you guys watching. Make sure you're subscribed to the channel. Make sure you go subscribe to Wicked's channel, and we'll see you all on the next one.